childhood haunts. Aurora Rose blinked. Instead of the expected dark but homely cottage with the usual paraphernalia, tidy hearth, pots, a broom, the interior was much, much larger than it should have been, and also brilliant blinding gold. When Aurora Rose's eyes finally adjusted, she saw where they really were, in an ornate, almost over-decorated room in the castle. Her castle. A room she had never seen before. The walls were draped in tapestries of golden animals, rabbits, deer, birds, a unicorn. An orange fire blazed merrily within a positively giant fireplace whose mantel was white marble inlaid with gold. Huge windows with leaded glass panes let in shafts of happy white sunlight. Thick rugs of white and gold thread covered the floor. Brightly coloured swags and garlands of flowers hung from every exposed surface. In the middle of the room was a golden cradle. Above it stood two tall, motionless adults. Aurora Rose felt something in her throat, a sob or a cry of joy as she realized who they were, and whom they were gazing at. She crept forwards almost like a forest creature, hands clasping each other. She peeked in the cradle. There, kicking and pink-faced, was baby Aurora. Grown-up Aurora knew herself immediately. The eyes were the same, the pale wisps of golden hair the same. But while most people would have been endlessly fascinated by the chance to observe themselves at such an early age, grown-up Aurora Rose more wanted to see someone else. She turned to look at the two adults who loomed over the cradle. Queen Leia. Almost like an older version of Aurora, but with slightly browner hair, slightly browner, thicker, friendlier eyebrows. The princess saw where her cheeks would eventually end up, shed of all the remaining puppy fat, sailing above the high cheekbones she also inherited. But her mother's looks didn't matter. It was the look she gave her baby that mattered. The queen was completely and utterly enraptured by her daughter in the cradle. Her eyes were wide and unblinking. A very slight smile was on her parted lips. Nothing could distract her from her watch. King Stefan. Skinny, a little tired-looking, kind brown eyes above a not particularly royal moustache and beard. His robes gave his body some depth. The fire gave his cheeks a little ruddiness. "Mother," Aurora Rose breathed. "Father." The parents she had never known. The parents she was supposed to be reunited with, only to part from on her 16th birthday, on her wedding day. The ones who had given her life and then given her away. And this was the only way she would ever get to see them again. In her memories. Her mother's beautiful loving face. Her father's, well, kingly one. She couldn't talk to them, ask them questions, hug them. She would never be able to find out why they had done what they had. She would never be able to curse them or forgive them. Philip coughed quietly, clearing his throat. Reluctantly, she looked up. Standing by the fireplace was the woman who had let them in, along with two other women. One was all in different, slightly faded shades of blue. She wore robes and belts and scarves and scraps of cloth, and even had quick blue eyes that matched, although they weren't faded. Her hair was as brown as a polished chestnut, and tied up in crazy buns on the back of her head, with sticks pointing out everywhere to hold them in place. The third woman was huge. Tall and muscled, strapping and strong. She wore a red tunic over rust-red leggings and boots. Her dark blonde hair hung to her waist and was pushed back from her face with a simple leather headband. Her skin was tanned and a little windburned, and her light brown eyes were dancing. "The fairies!" Aurora Rose cried. "Sort of," she added. Her memories still weren't perfect, but there was something off about them. Weren't they a little younger than her aunts? Or maybe they were older. They certainly dressed differently, and their eyes were different. "Don't look exactly like the twinkling ladies who rescued me," Philip whispered. "But they feel like them?" "Nothing is exactly the same in the dream world," one in blue said. "Just as in the dream your own house seems different, with more rooms, or things within it placed strangely. Everything here is a result of your perception, and edited by the quality of your memory. After all, reality is entirely subjective." "She means don't worry," the one in green said. "Things aren't what they seem. But that's not always a bad thing." "You tried to rescue me in the castle," the princess said. "You appeared to me and told me to wake up." "Not precisely, not us," the blue one said. "That was a manifestation of the real, waking world fairies, as was the one who sent Hubert to guide you." "Trust me, if we would have come to your rescue," the one in red said, "I would have come with my sword drawn and a thirst for Maleficent's blood." Philip looked at her with something like affection. "Here in this room you are in the only part of your memory completely free from Maleficent's reach," the woman in green said. She spread her hands and smiled. "These are your deepest, oldest, most untouched memories. You guard them very carefully, as do we all." "But that horrible girl thing attacked us not too far from here," Philip said accusingly. "Just a few minutes away." "Ah," the woman in green said sadly. "The manifestation spoke truly. Mostly she was a piece of Aurora Rose herself, a monster from her own mind. Maleficent may have given her a nudge or woken her fully, but she has always been close to the princess's heart." "I don't get it myself," the woman in red said frankly. "If it were up to me, I would have seen that nasty thing years ago in the real world." "Focus, please," the one in blue said to the red one. "Aurora, this all comes back to the fact that you are the dreamer. You, in the end, are responsible for this world. Inadvertently the beginning, and deliberately, hopefully, the end. Only you can end the curse and wake everyone. What we are experiencing now are the final effects of a magical promise made 16 years ago, sort of a balancing out of a magical equation. To wit, Maleficent publicly cursed you to die on your 16th birthday. Then Merryweather fixed it a bit with the amendment about you falling asleep. But unbeknownst to all of us, Maleficent tied her soul up in the curse. Had you actually died, your life force, and that of everyone else in the kingdom, to a lesser effect, would have been transferred to her. Instead, when Philip killed her, Maleficent's soul was still bound to you and followed you into your sleep. And of course we can all see what the result of that was." "Her controlling me in the world of my dreams," Aurora Rose murmured. "And unfortunately, the lives of everyone else asleep with you," the one in green added sadly. "An unintended consequence of a little bit of good the fairies thought they were doing by tying the fate of the kingdom to yours, so that even if it took 100 or 1,000 years for the curse to be broken by true love, you wouldn't wake up in a world you didn't know, surrounded by the great-great-grandchildren of people you knew." "All of which is neither here nor there," the blue one continued. "What is important is that a curse with this magnitude and complication can only be broken by spilling royal blood." "Queen Maleficent," Aurora Rose murmured. The one in red smiled at her appreciatively. "You must return to the castle and defeat her," she said, hand on her sword. "You must kill her once and for all. The moment she is finally dead and royal blood is shed, all will from their slumber rise and return to their waking lives. We will aid you, of course," she added with a bow. The princess let out an audible sigh of relief. She hadn't even realized who was holding her breath. Just the thought of the one in red battling by her side was encouraging, and having the other two around, well, they might at least be good for moral support. "But as the dreamer, you already have incredible powers at your disposal," the one in green said. "As you have discovered yourself. In the end, this is your world. You control it." "All right," Philip said, tapping his own sword. "We have our own Sorceress Rose, 2 good hand-to-hand fighters, 2, whatever you green and blue ladies can do, against Dream Maleficent. That sounds good. But what can Maleficent do, really? I defeated her with help before." The green one looked uneasily at the princess. "She has been growing stronger of late. I believe you can feel it, because we can." The red one lowered her eyes and kneeled for just a moment before rising again. "I'm sorry, your majesty, but the death of your parents has only made her more powerful. She is now fed upon royal blood and is much stronger." "Your majesty." Aurora Rose shivered. It was like the nightmare she had had in the haystack what they had called her, because her parents were dead, and they were now. She was queen. Queen. She looked at Philip, who gave her a sad smile and the straight-backed bow royalty gave those of higher rank. She swallowed hard. Forget the word, she told herself. She had to act like a queen. "Maleficent killed them and is more powerful, like she did Lady Astrid. She then takes something from them, their blood, in her staff?" "I saw, but didn't quite understand," the blue one nodded. "She took my parents' blood." "And used it," the princess repeated, feeling the first stirrings of anger. "You shall have your vengeance," the red one said grimly. The green one shook her head sadly. "Vengeance will not bring them back. Aurora Rose is on the cusp of meeting her mother and father, for whom she was separated for 16 years. It's a miracle that even this memory of them still exists. She will never be able to talk to them, blame them, learn from them, hate them, or love them for themselves now. She can only deal with the results of their actions." The red one shrugged. "Vengeance might make her feel better." "Also, it would wake everyone up," the blue one pointed out brightly. "A win all round." "Show a little compassion," the green one hissed. And the blue one shrugged. Not my thing. That's all you. I'm here to strategize. Rose looked back and forth among the three women, gladly distracted from the sad events by the puzzle before her. The fairies in real life had their own personalities, of course, despite their superficial similarities, as ageless, chatty, loving aunt figures. Flora tended to try to lead and make decisions for them. Meriwether seemed to understand the basic workings of the world better, although she rarely acted on this knowledge and instead chose to comment sarcastically on it. Sometimes she got sneaky and went behind Flora's back. Fauna was the one who hugged the princess the most and often acted as an intermediary between the other two. The green one, Fauna, seemed more concerned with how Aurora Rose was feeling. How everyone was feeling. She was the one who had been waiting outside the cottage for the prince and princess, like she was the one who cared. And the blue one, Meriwether, seemed incredibly quick-minded and brilliant, and even more sarcastic. Flora was brave and powerful and ready to plunge into any physical combat, and not for nothing, she was built like a gladiator. They were all acting like extreme versions of their real selves. What did it mean? Aurora Rose found herself drifting to the window. As she suspected, it did not look out on the lands beyond the outer wall. It was the view from her room in the cottage in the forest. Apple trees where birds nested and squirrels scampered, birch trees whose golden leaves lit up the meadow in autumn, a corner of the tiny kitchen garden the aunts tended. A peaceful scene that combined wild and tamed nature in a way that was so familiar it hurt. I'm never coming back here in real life, am I? The three women looked at her sadly. Probably not, child, Green One said. Or not for a long time. With your parents dead and no male heir, there will be a terrible mess when you all wake up, assuming we defeat Maleficent, the Blue One said. You will either take over the throne and defend it from the spurious claims of your distant cousins, or marry Philip and combine your kingdoms, or some variation of those situations, none of which will leave you much time to visit childhood haunts. Aurora Rose sucked in a deep and sudden painful breath. It was the word childhood that stung. Before the dream world she would have rejected the term. She was 16 and a woman, for heaven's sake. She had chosen the love of her life and had planned to run away with him. But now the looming permanent closing of a door on her past life seemed a little too inevitable and sad. I wake up and I'm grown up, she said dryly. That's some subtlety there. Philip, who had been silent through their whole exchange, looked at her with concern. Rose, you didn't used to be so cynical, he said, scraping for words. Sarcastic? I know the death of your parents has been a grievous blow, but you're becoming... No, changing into... something. I don't know. She just looked at him. Not that I don't like it, Philip added quickly. You're just different, that's all. Oh, he's a regular genius, that one, the Blue One said. The Green One whacked him on the arm. Aurora Rose smiled faintly. Maybe I'm finally becoming myself. She took Philip's hand and pointed out the window. Come here. Let me show you something. I used to climb that tree there, the biggest apple tree. I always thought the best apples were the highest up. I pretended the lower branches were a horse. You can just see the pea trellises there. I loved making them without fauna, out of dried vines and twigs. It was like weaving with plants, and I loved the little curlicue ends of the peas. I would love you to show me around where you grew up, Philip said gently, squeezing her hand. Whatever you feel for me now, I would enjoy it. Someday. She gave the prince a quick, sad smile, and then took his other hand and clasped them both for a moment. I know, but we have other things to do. The three women looked at her approvingly. They moved to the other side of the room and stood by a door where Rose was sure she hadn't been there before. She squared her shoulders and walked forwards, head held high, imagining she had on robes of state swirling behind her. Philip followed. First thing is to properly suit you two up, the Blue Fairy said matter-of-factly. He entered a long, broad hall lined with suits of armor and closets and chests of clothing stuffed to overflowing. Dresses, doublets, capes, and underskirts were all crammed so tightly that it looked like the furniture was choking to death on ripples of bright colours. Helmets, snoods, caps, gloves, tippets, girdles, and other accessories were piled haphazardly on shelves. At one time, Aurora Rose would have been thrilled to try on all the new different gowns. But now she strode forwards, looking for a nice pair of gauntlets that would fit instead. Philip was like a child in front of a table strewn with sweets. He picked up helmets, held them out, and regarded them with a serious eye, then put them down, only to skip over to the greaves and cuirasses, practically bubbling with delight. Can't those just magic us up protection? Like an invisible shield or something? He asked, trying on a breastplate for size. The Green One gave him an indulgent smile. The less she has to think about, to concentrate on. When the battle is joined, the better. Having these already on may buy you a few extra moments. At first the princess went for the ugliest, most clumsy-looking pieces in defiance of well, being a princess. But when she went to the tarnished silver oval that served as a mirror, and observed her slit-mouthed metal mask, the grotesque grey gauntlets, and the huge-shouldered spiked breastplate, all she saw was a monster. She cocked her head, and so did the monster. What was it thinking? Slowly she turned away from the mirror and went back to the racks and cupboards. "You want something to inspire your subjects," the Dream Fairy said gently, helping her take the mask off. "Not frighten them." "I know," Rose said glumly. The Dream Fairy squeezed her hands through the gauntlets. "It's not fair that you don't have time to try on all the different possibilities." The princess gave her a wry look. "My subconscious isn't all that subtle either, is it?" "In our defense, your world experience and reading habits haven't led you to being the most sophisticated person on the planet," the Blue Fairy said, blowing the dust off what looked very much like a child's shield, complete with big shiny gems set in it. She raised a knowing eyebrow. "I didn't know I had it in me to be so sarcastic either," the princess said, putting her hands on her hips. The Blue Fairy shrugged. "Just calling it like I see it." The Red Fairy disentangled herself from Philip, with whom she was having a broad laugh about the comparative weight and density of different kinds of steel. "Try these," she suggested. She held out a pair of simple long gauntlets that were almost as fine as gloves, chain underneath and plate on the top. Rose carefully took off the ones she wore and slipped the others on. They fit perfectly. "This is a bit more your style," the blue one said, approaching her with a breastplate that was almost as big as she was. It was curved femininely to fit Rose's body, but not ridiculously so. A stud design of roses and thorns were inlaid along the sides. It was sturdy and heavy. The princess had to readjust the way she stood to support it while everyone helped buckle it on the back. "And for the top," the red one said, looking around. "Let her choose," the green one suggested gently. Rose walked down the aisle slowly, getting used to the weight of the armor. She passed each of the women and then Philip, dashing in his shining cuirass and silver-white greaves like a soldier from ancient Rome. Her eyes swept over everything, everywhere, pausing nowhere. Golden helms, intricate onyx headpieces, spiked and dangerous-looking crowns, plated metal turbans. Finally she saw what she wanted. She strode forwards and lifted a helmet, one she knew would fit, off the top shelf. A point came down the middle of the forehead to protect her nose, and was also vaguely reminiscent of Maleficent's headpiece. But instead of horns, silver wings swept back over the ears. With slow, sure movements she put it on. It did fit. Perfectly. She turned around to show the others. Philip sucked in his breath. "You look magnificent, Rose. Like an ancient goddess of war." "Like victory," the green one said softly. The edges of everything around them changed quietly and unobtrusively. The five found themselves in a large, silent room that was a strange mixture of what a child might imagine a throne room looked like, and the cottage in which Rose had grown up. The stones that made up the walls were all far too big and simple-looking, the throne giant and garish in gold. There were several fireplaces around the sides instead of the one grand one the Thorn Castle had, and they all looked cozier, each with a little pot and broom by it. The floor was packed dirt with no rugs, and the tables were ridiculously fancy, with huge carved feet and yellow and blue runners down the middle, but set with crude wooden clay bowls and tureens of porridge. "Damn acorns again," Philip swore humorously, lifting a steaming lid. "We're not quite as skilled as Maleficent at manipulating your dream world," the blue one apologized. "This is what your man came up with when we asked it for practice room." "Let's get to work," the green one said politely but firmly. "We haven't much time." "We need to work on summoning first," the blue one said. "But do not turn to it immediately in battle. There are rules, even in this world. The creation of something from nothing will exhaust you unduly, as you may have already noticed. Better to make do with the things already around you. Keep this as a last resort." "You made a sword before," the red one said, tilting her chin at the empty space on Rose's girdle where it had hung previously. "Can you make a dagger?" Rose twitched her nose. Had she ever seen a dagger? In the Thorn Castle, some men and boys affected them. She had never seen the blades used for anything more than cleaning fingernails, the uncouth, or stabbing food, the slightly more couth. She was pretty sure she had never held one. "What about a knife, then? Just a knife? A sharp knife?" the other one asked impatiently. Rose could manage that. Her aunts had never seemed to care when she handled the one very sharp little bronze paring knife. They had let her hold it even as a toddler. She closed her eyes and held out her hands. She remembered the bone handle. She remembered the dull golden gleam. She remembered the sharp, slightly curved tip, perfect for starting to peel the thick rind of a fruit or vegetable. She felt its weight in her hand even before she opened her eyes. "Well done!" cheered the green one. "Good, good," the red fairy said impatiently. "Now summon 2 more, quickly." Rose bit her lip. The additional daggers appeared in her palm, which was now sweaty. "Great job!" Philip said excitedly. "Now throw them at the throne," the red one urged. Rose blinked and did what she told. She was good at that. She was not so good at throwing 3 daggers one-handed. They flew not very far and went every which way, clattering on tables and dirt floor. Everyone stared at her. The princess reddened. "With your mind, you ninny!" the blue one snapped. The green one did not hit the blue one, although it looked like she was sorely tempted. "Won't win against Maleficent in a fair hand-to-hand combat," the red one said politely. "In this protected part of your mind she can't see in. She won't know how strong your control of your own domain has become. So, try again. With magic." Rose chewed her lip, feeling embarrassed and hot. She closed her eyes. "Not a good idea in a fight," Philip said gently. "Keep your peepers open." Rose took a deep breath and forced her eyes to stay open, not blinking. She held out her hand. 3 daggers appeared in it. She looked at the throne. The 3 daggers launched themselves through the air and whistled as they flew. Where they hit the back of the giant chair, the tips buried themselves in the wood. She let out her breath. Everyone cheered. That was a strange thing, she realized as she panted and felt her cheeks cool down. Almost like people believed she could do this. Like she could do this. "Great!" the red one said. "Now grow a hill out the middle of the floor.